The phone in your pocket, the GPU behind every AI system you have ever touched. Over 90% of the most advanced chips powering them trace back to one island, smaller than Switzerland, and recognized by fewer than 15 nations, Taiwan. And somehow, the most powerful country on Earth has staked its future on this single place. What almost no one understands is how that happened, or what it costs when it unravels. In 1949, defeat on the mainland forced the nationalist government to make a desperate choice. Chiang Kai-shek, leader of the Kuomintang, ordered a retreat across the Taiwan Strait. Over 600,000 soldiers and more than 1.2 million civilians boarded ships, carrying what they could, leaving behind cities they once called home. The journey was chaotic and uncertain. Over 400 vessels ferried people and supplies. Each passage a gamble against time and the unknown. Taiwan, already an island marked by centuries of shifting rule, became the last stronghold of the Republic of China. Old maps were redrawn, temporary capitals appeared on paper, but the real center of power had moved offshore. The United States, watching the tides of the early Cold War, saw in Taiwan both a dilemma and an opportunity. Washington extended military aid and recognition, treating the island as the legitimate China, while the world's diplomatic lines blurred. For decades, the arrangement held, fragile, ambiguous, but persistent. Then came 1979. The United States formally recognized the People's Republic of China, cutting official ties with Taipei. Yet Congress, unwilling to abandon an ally, passed the Taiwan Relations Act on April 10th. In its pages, the United States pledged to provide arms and maintain commercial and cultural ties, insisting on a peaceful process to decide Taiwan's future. The act did not promise war. It built a legal bridge that would outlast shifting administrations and changing strategies. Taiwan's status became an anomaly, a government in exile, a democracy with limited recognition, and a partner bound to America by statute rather than treaty. The consequences of that choice still echo today, through every policy debate, every arms sale, every calculation of risk and reward. And in that fragile architecture, the seeds of present-day obsession took root. In the late 1980s, a quiet revolution began inside a modest industrial park in Hsinchu. Morris Chang, an engineer with decades of experience in American tech, founded the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company in 1987. Unlike the giants of Silicon Valley, Chang charted a different course. TSMC would not design its own chips. Instead, it would serve as a pure-play foundry, manufacturing chips for any client without competing in design. This model, radical at the time, stripped away conflicts of interest and opened the doors to a flood of global innovation. Designers from California to Cambridge could send their blueprints to Taiwan, knowing their intellectual property would be protected and their products built at the cutting edge. As the years passed, TSMC's cleanrooms expanded. The company invested relentlessly in the most advanced process nodes, 7 nanometers, 5 nanometers, now racing toward 3 and 2 nanometers. With each technical leap, barriers to entry grew higher. The cost of a single fabrication plant soared past $15 billion. The expertise required became a rare commodity, concentrated on an island smaller than Switzerland. By 2023, more than 90% of the world's most advanced chips, those at 7 nanometers or below, came from Taiwan. TSMC's market share in these nodes dwarfed all rivals, leaving even established firms like Samsung and Intel struggling to keep pace. The pure-play model, once an experiment, had become the beating heart of the global tech ecosystem. Smartphones, cloud servers, AI accelerators, all now depended on the steady rhythm of TSMC's wafer starts. The world's supply chains, from automotive giants to quantum computing labs, began to converge on a single point of failure. In this new era, the fate of entire industries could hinge on the uninterrupted hum of fabrication lines in Hsinchu and Tainan. What began as a business strategy had quietly transformed into leverage that reached far beyond commerce, into the deepest calculations of national power. In the summer of 2022, the U.S. Congress signed a law that would channel $52 billion into domestic semiconductor manufacturing. The CHIPS and Science Act was more than a cash infusion. It was a hedge against vulnerability. For decades, American firms had relied on the steady pulse of silicon from Taiwan, but the pandemic shattered any illusion of security. When COVID-19 swept across borders, and assembly lines in Detroit and Dallas fell silent, not for lack of labor, but for want of chips. Automakers parked unfinished vehicles in lots, waiting for microcontrollers that never arrived. Smartphone launches slipped. Data centers rationed upgrades. What had once been invisible, just another component, became a national headache. The CHIPS Act aimed to change that. Of the $52 billion, $39 billion went to direct manufacturing incentives, while $11 billion was earmarked for research and supply chain security. The numbers themselves told a story. Washington was no longer content to let the world's most advanced logic chips be made thousands of miles from home. Lawmakers and policy architects spoke in terms of economic resilience and national security. The subtext was clear: America needed insurance. Subsidies flowed not just to American giants, but also to foreign firms willing to build on U.S. soil. TSMC broke ground in Arizona. Samsung expanded in Texas. Intel announced new plants in Ohio. The lesson was written in shortages and price spikes. Dependency on a single island could not be left to chance. Through money and law, the United States tried to buy time, flexibility, and a margin of safety. But even as new fabs rose from the desert, the world's appetite for chips kept growing, and the center of gravity remained stubbornly offshore, just beyond reach, across the strait. August 2022, a U.S. Air Force jet descends over Taipei, its arrival tracked by millions online. On board is Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, the highest-ranking American official to set foot in Taiwan in a quarter century. Her visit lasts less than 24 hours, but the impact reverberates far beyond the island's shores. Beijing's response is immediate and unmistakable. The People's Liberation Army launches a series of live-fire drills encircling Taiwan, deploying dozens of ships and aircraft. Ballistic missiles arc overhead, some landing in waters claimed by Japan. Airspace closes, commercial shipping diverts. The world watches as the Taiwan Strait transforms overnight into a stage for military theater. For American policymakers, the spectacle lands against a backdrop of war in Europe. 6 months earlier, Russian armor crossed into Ukraine, shattering assumptions about distant conflicts and the durability of old boundaries. Congressional hearings in Washington begin to draw the parallel out loud. An authoritarian power, a smaller democracy, the risk that hesitation buys only vulnerability. Kurt Campbell, the White House's top Asia strategist, warns that the lessons of Ukraine cannot be ignored in the Pacific. Strategic ambiguity, the careful refusal to say exactly how America would respond to an attack, hangs heavier than ever. Suddenly, the question is not just about chips or commerce, but about the raw calculus of force. The world's attention, once fixed on supply chains and trade routes, now lingers on the map's red lines and missile arcs. The fragile status quo feels more exposed. In this moment, Taiwan is no longer just an economic lifeline. It is a flashpoint where signals and symbols threaten to become something far more concrete. The map of East Asia tells its own story. Taiwan sits along the first island chain, a string of islands stretching from Japan through the Philippines, forming a natural barrier between the Asian mainland and the open waters of the Pacific. At its narrowest, the Taiwan Strait measures just 130 kilometers across, close enough for radar to sweep the horizon, close enough for missiles to cross in minutes. This geography is not just a backdrop, it is a physical chessboard. The People's Liberation Army has stationed anti-ship ballistic missiles along China's coast, including the DF-21D, with a reach of 1,500 kilometers. These weapons are designed to keep carrier groups and reinforcements at bay, projecting force across the strait and deep into the Pacific. The concept is known as Anti-Access Area Denial, abbreviated A2AD. It is a strategy meant to turn the waters around Taiwan into a zone of risk, where every ship, every aircraft, every supply run becomes a calculation. The island's location and the reach of these weapons combine to create a vulnerability. A blockade here would not just be possible, but potentially decisive. In this narrow gap, geography and technology fuse, shaping the choices and the dangers faced by every actor on the board. 30 days. That's all it would take for the shockwaves to circle the globe. If the strait closed and Taiwan's advanced fabs fell silent, the world's supply of artificial intelligence-grade graphics processing units would shrink by 15%. Overnight, data centers would scramble to ration processing power. Cloud services would queue up, waiting for chips that simply aren't coming. Smartphone launches would slip, automotive plants would idle, and research labs from Boston to Berlin would shelve projects for lack of silicon. The numbers are not abstract. A single month of lost production translates into billions of dollars erased from company ledgers and national accounts. Analysts estimate a $45 billion hit to global smartphone revenue alone, with the cost of artificial intelligence training spiking as inventories vanish. The ripple would reach every corner of the tech economy, from the code that powers language models to the systems that guide autonomous vehicles. For a moment, the world would feel just how much it depends on the rhythm of wafer starts in Taiwan, and how quickly that rhythm can be broken. Beneath the surface of global headlines, Taiwan stands as a crossroads where silicon meets sovereignty, and every calculation carries global weight. As alliances shift and technology races forward, the island's fate quietly shapes our own. Power balances here every day. The world watches, uncertain how this standoff will end. The